The witching hour, they call it. 3 a.m., when the world is cloaked in silence, and the veil between the known and the unknown thins. For Sarah Whitaker, a 29-year-old graphic designer living alone in a century-old Victorian house in the sleepy town of Eldridge, Maine, that hour became a descent into terror. She had moved to the house seeking solitude, a place to escape the noise of city life. The creaking floorboards and drafty windows were charming quirks at first, relics of a bygone era. But on a frigid November night, something stirred in the darkness of her home, shattering her sense of safety. What began as a faint sound grew into a nightmare that would unravel the house's secrets and test the limits of her sanity. This is the story of Sarah's encounter with the unknown, a tale woven with dread, mystery, and the unrelenting grip of fear. Sarah's new home stood at the end of Maple Lane, its gabled roof and ivy-covered facade giving it an air of forgotten elegance. Built in 1892, the house had belonged to the Hawthorne family, a name whispered in Eldridge with unease. Locals spoke of tragedies, a fire, a disappearance, a death, but no one agreed on the details. Sarah, a pragmatist, dismissed the rumors as small-town folklore. The house was a steal, its price slashed after years on the market. She loved its quirks, the stained glass window in the foyer, the clawfoot tub, the attic with its dusty trunks. But the first night she slept there, she woke at 3 a.m., heart pounding, certain she'd heard a faint thump downstairs. She checked every room, finding nothing but shadows. Old houses settle, she told herself, ignoring the chill that lingered long after she returned to bed. The next few weeks were uneventful. Sarah settled into a routine, working from her makeshift office in the parlor. But the house felt alive at night, its creaks and groans louder, more deliberate. She began to notice patterns, a faint tapping from the walls, always around 3 a.m., like fingers drumming on wood. She checked for rodents, drafts, anything logical, but found nothing. Her sleep grew fitful, her dreams plagued by visions of a figure standing at the foot of her bed, its face obscured by darkness. She laughed it off in the daylight, blaming stress, but the unease grew, a seed of doubt taking root. On November 12th, Sarah woke to a sound that wasn't a creak or a tap, a heavy, deliberate thud, like furniture being dragged across the floor. The clock read 3:02 a.m. Her bedroom was pitch black, the moonlight blocked by heavy curtains. She lay frozen, straining to listen. The sound came again, from the direction of the dining room. Her heart raced as she grabbed her phone, its light casting long shadows on the walls. She considered calling 911, but hesitated. What would she say? "My house is making noises." Slipping on a robe, she crept downstairs, clutching a flashlight. The dining room was empty, the oak table untouched, its chairs neatly tucked in. But the air felt wrong, heavy, like someone had just left the room. She scanned the corners, the beam trembling in her grip. Then she saw it. A single chair, slightly askew, its legs misaligned with the others. She hadn't touched it. Her breath hitched as she pushed it back into place, the wood scraping loudly in the silence. Upstairs, she locked her bedroom door, convincing herself it was nothing. But sleep didn't come. The tapping resumed, now closer, as if it were in the walls of her room. The next day, Sarah scoured the house for answers. She checked the attic, the basement, even the crawl space, but found only dust and cobwebs. At the local library, she dug into the town's archives, uncovering fragments of the Hawthorne family's history. A fire in 1901 that killed a child. A mother's suicide in 1920. A man who vanished in 1955. The articles were vague, the details inconsistent. Sarah closed the books, feeling foolish. Old houses had stories, but they didn't move furniture. The disturbances grew bolder. One night, Sarah woke to the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing the hallway outside her room. It was 3 a.m. again. She held her breath, listening as the steps paused outside her door. The knob rattled just once, then silence. She didn't dare move until dawn, when she found the hallway empty, the doors still locked, but the rug was rumpled, as if someone had stood there, shifting their weight. She installed a motion sensor camera in the hallway, hoping to catch an animal or a draft in the act. The first night, the footage showed nothing but static. The second night, it captured a shadow, a fleeting, human-shaped blur that crossed the frame at 3:04 a.m. Sarah replayed it a dozen times, her stomach churning. The shadow had no source, no corresponding object to cast it. She showed the clip to her friend Mia, who laughed nervously and suggested a prank. "Old wiring," Mia said. "Or maybe you've got a ghost." Sarah didn't laugh. She began sleeping with the lights on, but the noises persisted. Whispers now, too faint to decipher, and the occasional scrape of something heavy moving downstairs. She stopped inviting friends over, embarrassed by her growing paranoia. The house, once a sanctuary, felt like a cage. She considered moving, but couldn't afford it. Besides, she refused to be driven out by her own imagination, or so she told herself. On November 20th, Sarah found something that shattered her skepticism. In the upstairs bathroom, scrawled in faint, uneven letters on the mirror, was the word "leave." It hadn't been there the night before. She wiped it away with a towel, her hands shaking, but the condensation revealed it again the next morning. She scrubbed until her fingers ached, but the word reappeared each night, always at 3 a.m. She stopped using the bathroom, keeping the door shut. Desperate, she contacted a local historian, Dr. Evelyn Morse, who knew the Hawthorne house's history. Over coffee, Evelyn shared what the archives hadn't. The Hawthornes were rumored to have dabbled in occult practices. The mother's suicide in 1920 was no accident. She'd been found in the attic, surrounded by strange symbols, a knife in her hand. The child, who died in 1901, had been locked in the basement during the fire, for reasons no one could explain. Evelyn warned Sarah to be careful. "Some houses hold on to their past," she said. Sarah nodded, but her mind reeled. Occult, it was absurd, yet the word on the mirror felt like a warning. That night, Sarah stayed up, determined to face whatever was happening. At 3 a.m., the air grew cold, and the tapping returned, now accompanied by a low hum, like a distant voice. She followed it to the attic, where the sound was loudest. The attic door, always locked, stood ajar. Inside, she found a trunk she hadn't noticed before, its lid carved with symbols that matched Evelyn's description. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a leather-bound book filled with handwritten notes and diagrams, rituals, incantations, and a name: Eleanor. The book belonged to Eleanor Hawthorne, the mother who died in 1920. Its pages described her obsession with contacting her dead son, the child lost in the fire. The rituals spoke of binding and crossing the veil, but the writing grew erratic, as if Eleanor had lost her grip on reality. Sarah slammed the book shut, her skin crawling. The air in the attic felt thick, oppressive, as if someone were watching her. She locked the trunk and fled downstairs, but the hum followed, growing louder each night. Now, objects began to move. A glass slid across the kitchen counter. A door slammed shut on its own. One night, Sarah woke to find her shoes arranged in a perfect circle at the foot of her bed. The camera caught nothing but static during these events, as if something interfered with it. She stopped sleeping, surviving on coffee and fear. The word "leave" appeared on other surfaces: windows, walls, even her laptop screen. flickering for a moment before vanishing. Sarah called Evelyn again, who agreed to visit. In the attic, Evelyn paled at the sight of the book. "This is dangerous," she said. Eleanor didn't just contact her son, she invited something else. Evelyn urged Sarah to burn the book, but Sarah hesitated. What if it made things worse? That night at 3 a.m., the hum became a voice, whispering her name. Sarah. Sarah. It came from the basement. The basement door, always locked, was now open, a yawning black rectangle at the end of the hall. Sarah had avoided the basement since moving in. It was damp, cluttered with old furniture, and smelled of mildew. But the voice drew her, soft and insistent. She grabbed a flashlight and descended, the steps creaking under her weight. The air grew colder with each step, her breath visible in the beam. At the bottom, she found a small room she hadn't noticed before, its walls covered in faded chalk symbols. In the center was a charred spot, as if a fire had burned there long ago. The voice stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. Then a child's giggle echoed behind her. She spun, but no one was there. Her flashlight flickered, then died, plunging her into darkness. Something brushed her arm, cold and fleeting, like fingers grazing her skin. She screamed, scrambling up the stairs, slamming the door shut. Evelyn returned the next day with a priest, Father Daniel, who blessed the house. But the blessing seemed to anger whatever was there. That night, the tapping became pounding. The whispers became shouts, and the basement door rattled violently. Sarah barricaded it with furniture, but the noises only grew louder. She found more writing on the walls. "You can't leave." The air felt alive, pressing against her, suffocating her. Sarah's life unraveled. She stopped working, her clients frustrated by missed deadlines. She barely ate, her body weak from lack of sleep. The house was no longer hers. It belonged to whatever Eleanor had summoned. She tried to leave, packing a bag and driving to a motel, but the whispers followed, echoing in her head. When she returned, the house was worse. Furniture overturned, mirrors cracked, and the air thick with the smell of ash. She burned Eleanor's book in the backyard, hoping it would end the nightmare. The flames flared unnaturally high, and for a moment she saw a figure in the smoke. A woman with hollow eyes, her mouth open in a silent scream. The disturbances didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. The child's giggle became a wail, and the shadow in the hallway grew solid, its form clearer each night. A woman in a tattered dress, her face obscured by matted hair. Sarah reached out to a paranormal investigator, Marcus Reed, who arrived with equipment, EMF meters, thermal cameras, and audio recorders. His readings spiked at 3 a.m., capturing voices that weren't Sarah's. "Get out," one said. "She's mine," said another. Marcus was shaken but determined. He believed Eleanor's ritual had opened a door, and something malevolent had crossed through. He suggested a cleansing ritual, but it required entering the basement again. On November 28th, Sarah, Marcus, and Father Daniel prepared for the cleansing. Marcus drew a circle of salt in the basement, placing candles at its edges. Father Daniel recited prayers, his voice steady despite the growing cold. Sarah held Eleanor's symbols, copied from the book before it burned, as Marcus instructed her to read an incantation to close the door. The air grew heavy, the candles flickering. At 3 a.m., the basement shook, as if the house itself were resisting. The woman's shadow appeared, now fully formed, her eyes burning with rage. She lunged at Sarah, who screamed the incantation, her voice breaking. The symbols on the walls glowed, then faded, and the woman's form dissolved into smoke. The child's wail echoed one last time, then silence. The air lightened, the candles steadying. Marcus's equipment went quiet. It was over. or so they thought. Upstairs, the house felt different, lighter, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered. She found a new message on her bedroom mirror. "I'm still here." Her heart sank. The ritual had banished the woman, but something else remained, something older, angrier. Sarah couldn't stay. She packed her essentials, determined to leave for good. But at 3 a.m., the house came alive. Doors slammed, windows rattled, and the basement door burst open, furniture flying aside. The child's giggle returned, now distorted, guttural. Sarah ran to the front door, but it wouldn't budge, as if sealed by an invisible force. The lights flickered, plunging the house into darkness. She hid in the attic, clutching a kitchen knife, her phone dead. The footsteps returned, climbing the stairs, slow and deliberate. The attic door creaked open, and the air grew freezing. A voice, not the woman's, not the child's, whispered, "You belong to me." Sarah swung the knife blindly, hitting nothing. The presence retreated, but she knew it wasn't gone. At dawn, the door finally opened, and Sarah fled, leaving everything behind. She stayed with Mia, refusing to return. The house was put up for sale, but no one bought it. Locals whispered that it was cursed, that the Hawthorne sins had stained it forever. Sarah never returned to the house on Maple Lane, but the experience haunted her. She moved to a new city, seeking therapy to cope with the nightmares. The whispers faded, but 3 a.m. remained a cursed hour, her body tensing each night as the clock ticked closer. She learned to live with the fear, but questions lingered. What was the presence in the basement? Was it Eleanor, her son, or something older, something the Hawthorns had awakened? The house still stands, its windows dark, its secrets buried in the walls. Eldridge locals avoid it, and those who pass by at night swear they hear tapping or see a shadow in the windows. Sarah's story is a warning. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed, and some houses are more than wood and stone. They're prisons for things that should never be disturbed.